Hey everyone, it's Dylan and Charlie from the Black Forest Wood Company. This week we're going to show you our process of constructing a 16-foot long by 6-foot wide conference table that we sold for over $40,000. So the first step with this build, after we've pulled it out from our slab bay, is to cut it to its rough size that will fit in the mold. So not only is this going to allow it to fit in the mold, but we also like to do this before we complete our initial flattening because it does help to remove any of those corners that might be warped up or twisted, and this way we can get the maximum thickness out of this slab of wood. Since this is going to be a cast, it means that we're not able to split this piece down the middle, and the client actually requires almost the full length of this piece. So we're really just relying on GL Veneer providing us a product that was dried perfectly flat. Now, while this slab does have a little bit of warp, it's actually quite remarkable how flat GL Veneer was able to dry this piece. We experience pieces that are a quarter this size, that are way more warped than this. So to have such a giant piece of wood be sitting this flat is pretty darn good for us to be able to make a table out of. So once we get both sides of this slab, I would say about 90% clean, then we can get it debarked and prepped to go inside of the mold.
So the slab is approximately 950 pounds, and then we're adding about 500, 600 pounds of resin to it.
Yeah, and we don't have to deliver this one. So we're happy about that.
Where's this one going?
Alabama, I think.
It's Alabama? Yeah, this one is.
Yep, oh. The alcohol smell is really painful.
Oh, that's the pigment?
Yeah.
Oh,
that smell is the pigment.
Wow.
It smells really bad.
I think it smells great.
Yeah. Now, the pigment we're using here is an alcohol-based pigment, so that is the reason for, the excessive smell that our guys are complaining about. Normally, we don't have to use this much pigment, but in order to get a solid black color, you pretty much just squeeze the bottle until it goes solid black. Of course, for this pour, we're using our Black Forest Deep resin. That's kind of one of the tricks on how we can accomplish such a large mass of resin in a single shot without experiencing any overheating issues. So it's not just the resin. I'm not going to lie to you guys and say that if you use our resin, you can pour any thickness, but number one, the resin helps big time. Number two, our room is air conditioned. And number three, we're using an aluminum cooled table to actually pour our resin over. And I guess number four, an additional one, is the fans that we blow on the surface. So the combination of all those helps to keep the resin in check during the curing process. But even with all of those cooling precautions, if you were not using a high quality resin, it would still overheat. Another thing I'll mention is that because it is Black Friday today, we have our resins 10% off right now on our online store, so you guys can check out the link in the description for some savings on our resins. And then after 1 week of curing in the mold, we can get this table downstairs onto our Avid CNC machine for flattening. So this process essentially is removing the excess epoxy on the top surface so we can get back down to the raw wood surface. And what John is doing here right now is routing a couple of pockets into this table. So we have 3 holes that go all the way through that are going to accept the power boxes. So this is just for some power integration for our client. I believe he has a couple USB ports and just some regular outlets. And what we'll also be adding to this on the underside of the table is some recesses just to accept the legs. And then we can size this piece using our Festool track saw. So Festool does make really nice equipment for the most part, but in my opinion, their track saw is a little bit underpowered. You can see that John has to make this cut in multiple passes, and even with the dust extraction on there, it still is a very messy cut that's going to produce lots of shavings. So it is a very precise saw with lots of fancy adjustment on it, but a little weak for this application. It's like Mirka's been watching us build all these big tables or something, and they've decided to make something that's going to make our lives easier. Boom. The Lee Ross. So this is Mirka's 9-inch orbital sander, brand new, fully integrates into all the vacuum systems, and it kind of works out perfectly that we're working on a 16-foot table and a 17-foot table right now. Yep. Wow, look at this thing. That's nice. So it's got a grip there. Having this extra diameter is going to save us a ton of time on the table. So I think Christian's actually working on the big one right now. I'm gonna go give this to him and we'll see this thing in action. So this was our first time using these sanders and we are already hooked. We absolutely love these things and we will not be sanding any of our big tables without them. And for you guys, we also have a Black Friday promotion going on the Mirkas. So if you purchase this brand new big sander from Mirka, they're going to include 2 free 10 packs of 180 grit and 240 grit with the sander. And with these big 9-inch discs, it is expensive sandpaper for these. So there is a little bit of savings to be offered. And as you can see here now, John with the 6-inch Mirka is having to work a lot harder than James and Christian with their 9-inch Mirkas. So if you guys want to save yourselves time and effort, pick up a 9-inch Mirka. Now, since we were on a tight deadline to get this table down to our client in Alabama before the end of the month, we unfortunately missed the spray finishing process. Fortunately though, we did get to film our ceramic coating process. Christian and Curtis are going to be applying 2 coats of our base coat and then follow that up with at least 1 coat of our top coat. That is what is actually going to give this table its extra level of protection to prevent against any scratches and give it a hydrophobic effect. Also, another deal for you guys, we have our ceramics 25% off for Black Friday, which is something that I don't think we've ever done ceramics 25% off. So you guys will want to get in on this.
Just lean it more on me. I'm good.
Slow down.
Slow down.
About as good as I can be, yeah.
And then once we've got all of our finishing process done, it's time to unwrap our legs from Forge 53 and begin assembling them to the other side of the table. So the first thing that we're going to do is slowly lower the table down and try and get these plates lined up into the recesses that we've cut. What you're also seeing here is the custom conduit leg that we had manufactured for this table. So it does have a hinged magnetic door on it, and what the purpose of this leg is to actually cover the power that's going to come from the floor and then run up through that leg directly to the power boxes in the top of the table. So once we have the table set on the legs, our first step is to use a punch set and just hammer out roughly where we're going to want to install our threaded inserts. We then take a Forstner bit and actually drill out the recess that is going to accept our threaded inserts. And once that's drilled out, we simply use a hex key and put those inserts in. The benefit of using a threaded insert over a traditional wood screw is that the piece can be taken apart and put back together as many times as you want without having to worry about stripping out those holes. Whereas with traditional wood screws, if you were to, let's say, take the piece apart, put it back together 3 or 4 times, your holes would likely be stripped out and then your legs aren't really going to be reliably secured to the underside of your table.
There.
And a few more of the details before we sign off about this table. So it's a slab of California Claro walnut, and then we've got these boxes that we've installed for power integration into the tops. There is 2 plugs, and then there's a USB-C and a regular USB outlet on there. And then underneath the table here, we've got our conduit leg for power integration. So this is a hinged magnetic door, as you can see, and there's a power box that's going to be in the floor, and then all the wires can run up to the underside of the table. So we're very happy with the way this piece turned out. Now, normally this is where our videos would end, but this time we're going to show you the shipping process and packing this table in the crate to show you what it's actually going to take to safely get this table down to Alabama. One of the most challenging parts of building a table this large is the manpower that it takes to physically move these pieces around. So as you can see here in this shot, we have just about everybody in our whole entire shop just to do simple things like lower the table down a few feet or flip it over to the bottom side. It takes a huge amount of effort to do this, and it's also quite nerve-wracking to try and do these kinds of things without getting any damage on the table. And as a final touch on all of our tables, we've started adding these solid pewter badges from Blue Badger Branding. We've also added some cable management to the underside of this table, so this is just going to prevent those cables from hanging down and catching on anyone's knees. Then, once we have the table completely wrapped up in foam, we forklift it into the crate. We use 1-inch thick insulation foam to separate the legs and the tabletop, and then we actually set the solid steel legs on top of that 1-inch foam. We overhang the plates just over to the edge, and then we screw those plates into the side of the crate, so then those legs aren't going to be shifting anywhere during transit. So we can go ahead and screw the top of that crate on, put a fragile little safety triangle on top. I don't know if shippers actually respect those all the time, because we've had our tables show up to clients' houses before with the triangle compressed, but luckily our tables are still in good shape. And then finally, it's time to use our forklift and get this table onto the trailer, where it's going to head off to the shipping depot and then down to our client's office in Alabama. We're very happy with the way that this piece turned out, but we'd love to hear your comments below on what you guys have to say about this piece, and we'll see you next week.